Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. I'm your host, Michelle Berard, founder and CEO of Michelle Berard LLC. I am really happy to share this hour with you, where we examine all those places where spirit meets life and the joys and challenges that may bring. You know, I like to start by thanking Ms. Beverly Black and Tribe Family Channel for helping me create this space for us. Tribe Family Channel is home to an assortment of thought-provoking shows that explore life, spirit, business, and culture, including The Woman at the Well, hosted by Miss Beverly Black herself. Somewhere in the Middle was born on Tribe Family Channel. And even though we've grown onto our own platform, we are ever grateful and loyal to our roots. To paraphrase an African proverb, we're here only because we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. I want to thank my guest on the November 20th show, Master Integrative Life Coach Nancy Picard. You can connect with Nancy on social media and at her website, nancypickardlifecoach.com. That's NancyPickard lifecoach.com. If you missed that show, make sure you listen to the replay. You can find our complete show archives, including the November 17th show, at the somewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. I also want to shout out Bruce George of the Genius is Common movement, which encourages all of us to embrace our inner genius and share it with the world. This is a really important message, and I hope you will share it with the young people. But it's not just for the kids. We adults need to be reminded sometimes that the world needs our genius. Learn more about the Genius is Common movement at www.geniusiscommon.com. Now, this month's guest helps leaders manage their time more efficiently. Originally from Chicago, Paul Casey has now been a professional speaker for over 25 years, giving almost 300 presentations just in the last 4 years. He is one of the leading authorities in leadership and personal growth, especially time management, helping people take back their calendars and restore sanity to their lives. He has spoken for organizations like McDonald's, Subway, Weston, Northwest Public Power, and Autozone. And among the 80 leaders he coaches per year, 25 of them lead at Pacific NW National Laboratories. Paul has a master's degree in education and has been an educator, administrator, chief operating officer in 5 nonprofit organizations. He is an ACC-certified coach with the International Coaching Federation, a master trainer, and is a member of the National Speakers Association. He was awarded Solopreneur of the Year by the West Richland Chamber a few years ago. Through his company, Growing Forward Services, Paul has partnered with his corporate and individual clients to transform their vision, their habits, and their lives. Currently, Paul carries out his mission of sparking breakthrough success by contributing daily inspirational growth messages on local radio, other people's podcasts, and via social media. Also, he has inspired thousands of individuals and leaders to grow forward through his seminars, team-building off-site retreats, one-to-one self-leadership coaching, and as a keynote speaker. Paul has written 4 books: The Static Cling Principle on Habits and Mindset, Maximizing Every Minute on Time Management, Leading the Team You've Always Wanted, and Leading with Supervision. He also interviews local leaders on his podcast, The Tri-Cities Influencer. Paul is married to lovely Laura, has a 23 and 19-year-old named after state capitals, owns a cat named Sasha, and has lived in the Tri-Cities, Washington area for over 20 years. For fun, he enjoys golfing, hiking, and bicycling, and orange slices, and he reads about 40 books per year. So I would like to welcome Paul Casey to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. Paul, thank you for being on the show.
Michelle, what a pleasure.
Well, I'm excited. First of all, I see that you're a native of Chicago, great town, great town. I think I fell in love with it when I was there this summer. And I want to know more and more about you. I usually start my interview with 2 questions. And so if you're ready, I will ask those 2 questions.
Let's go for it.
All right. Paul Casey, who are you and how did you become who you are today?
Such a deep question. Well, I guess I'll start with my core values. So faith is a big deal. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ and a man of faith. And that's going to play into my story here in a minute. Family is my second core value. I am married, second marriage, 12 years to Laura. And I have 2 wonderful young adults now. I'm officially an empty nester. So as of this year, I've got a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old boy and a girl named after state capitals. That wasn't intentional, but Austin and Cheyenne. And so if we would have had a third, it would have been Lincoln or Madison. We would have had it set. The other ones don't seem to work. And then growth is my third core value. So my whole life, it's been about being an educator, helping people get to the next level, growing myself. I'm an insatiable learner. It's one of the strengths on the Strength Finder for me. And so, yeah, and I'm a little bit more on the introvert than extrovert, although I'm sort of that ambivert in the middle, which I can turn it up on a stage to speak to 1,000 people, but I can also just love reading a book and journaling for an hour or 2 at a time. So I can go either way with introvert, extrovert. How I got here? Well, I grew up, like you said, in the suburb of Chicago, and grew up in a Christian family. So I was in the same, so I was in like a Christian school and a church and a home and all of the same values, pretty sheltered growing up, actually very sheltered growing up. But I didn't know any different, right? And so my world was very, very small. And so I didn't have a lot of miscues or scars that a lot of people have in their life, because it was pretty much sheltered in a bubble, almost like in a greenhouse. So there's good and bad to that, right? So the good was I didn't make too many bad errors, and the bad was I wasn't ready for life in the real world. So went off to college in Florida, got a teaching degree in elementary education. Both my parents were teachers. And even though I knew all the dirt on like how bad teaching was on a bad day, I still wanted to be one. I just love the thought of educating. I was like the teacher's pad, the one that would come up after class. Anything I could do to help you, Mrs. So-and-so, I was that kid, right? This is today I've got quiz, and everybody would be like, and growl at me, because I did love school. Then after college, I was seeing if, so a girl I met there, I wanted to see if she was the one for me. She was from Southern California. And that was like another planet for me. I had never been west of the Mississippi before. And so I moved out there and got a job in a 5th grade class out there. And it was just a whole new world. I want to see if she was the one for me. I knew she wasn't, but it was like, this is all like cool and exciting. And it really put all my values to the test. And it was like, I don't know. I just had to sort of had a reinvention that happened during that time. And so we broke up within 4 months, and there I was alone in Southern California with 5th graders and their parents. And that was my whole circle of influence.
Wow.
Yep. Got promoted to vice principal 2 years later, even though I didn't see that in me, but a leader saw that in me and said, you've got leadership in you. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me what I need to do. It's like, well, I'd like you to be vice principal for half the day and then teach PE the other half of the day, to justify a full-time position. I did it, and it was super fun. Got to know 500 students instead of just 20. And then went through the earthquake in '94 in Northridge and was like, we are out of here.
You don't like that earth shaking under your feet business?
No, I could still picture the building moving right now as I think about it. And the smog and the traffic and the lack of family values and there was a whole bunch of reasons. And I had just gotten married that year. And she said, let's go to my home state, which is Washington State. And I'm like, sure, I'm game. I've never been up there either. And I didn't want the rain of Seattle. And so she said, well, there's an east side of the state that's totally different. I'm like, how different can one state be? Well, it's very different on the other side of the Cascades. And so I mailed resumes to Christian schools on the east side. I got picked right away. They interviewed me within 2 weeks. Within 4 weeks, we had moved here to this small area called the Tri-Cities. It's in the bottom southeast corner of the state. And the next year they wanted me to be a school principal. And I'm like, I'm only 26 years old. And they're like, we'll give you a master's degree. We'll pay for it. I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And I did that, took the long plan of 5 years, got a master's. Let's see, I'm making a short story long here. So then took a school in the Seattle area for a couple of years, didn't like that, moved back here to the Tri-Cities, and then switched over to the church side of things, where I became like a family pastor at a church. They needed someone to help with parenting skills for the parents. It was a very large, like a mega church. And so they had people doing youth ministry and children's, but they didn't have anybody working with the family as a system. And so they wanted me to do that. And I said, great. And all the stress of being a principal rolled off my back. And I'm like, great, I'd be happy to do that. And this is when like podcasts were just starting, and like recording onto CDs was a big deal. And I did live seminars for parents, and it was super fun. They let me experiment and be creative. But sadly, along the way, my wife said, I don't want to be married anymore. And I was just like, what did you just say? Like, she's like, yeah, I don't, she went on a business trip and came back and said, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was it just like was getting hit in the mouth. You know, I was like, I'm a pastor at one of the biggest churches in town, and you want a divorce. And it just blew me away. I mean, it just wrecked me. I hit bottom. And I knew that at that moment I had to reinvent myself yet again at that point, because it was such a tragedy. And I felt so sorry for my children, who were 6 and 3 at the time. And it just was not the way I had scripted out my life. And I was happy that another church picked me up and wanted me to be an executive pastor, which is like being a principal, but at a church without kids. And sort of rebuilt my life, got new hobbies, got good guy friends, got good counseling, started, like golfing and hiking. And then I learned about what coaching was. And I thought, like life coaching. And I thought, oh, that's some woo-woo thing, life coaching. What's that? And after that, it was like, I found out like, this is what I do naturally. I love helping people get to their goals and their dreams. I love helping people get unstuck and get to the next level. I do it naturally with friends and family and strangers even. And I wonder if I could make a career of that. So while I had the day job, I started the dream job back in 2012, and just had a few clients, and that started moving up. And so I could speak, do team building, and coach. And I thought, wonder if this could be a business full time. So in 2015, I launched full time. Scariest thing, right? Your income goes to zero right away. I had been remarried then in 2009. My wife was like, what are you doing? Kind of thing. Like, I don't know if this is a good plan. And after about a year, I networking. I got enough clients to make a living, and then got a big contract at a bigger, like a national laboratory, to do coaching. And that was what I needed to say, all right, I'm not looking back. And I've been doing that for 6 years now. I love what I do. I'm living my values every day. And yeah, that's my story.
That's amazing. Well, I want to take you back to those values, because you said 3 things: faith, family, and growth. Tell me more about faith.
Yeah.
How does that factor into you as a business person? How does that factor into what you do as a coach?
That's so good. Yes. Yeah, originally I thought, oh, I'm just going to coach people of faith that have a strong faith. And I was counseled early on, like, you're taking out a big chunk of the world that you could influence for positive values if you did that. That was a tough decision I had to make early on, like not to take it out of my life, but to just not put it front page on the website, kind of a deal. And it was like, well, I'm still going to cast a positive shadow over anyone I coach or speak to. But, I'm probably not going to use Bible verses when I'm doing a keynote speech for a business. And so that it was a little bit of a change for me to still live my faith and be true to who I am, and yet still not be like, what's the word, like evangelistic with it, like to say like, you all have to be like me right now. And so that was something that I've had to mature in over time, because it's still this huge part of me, and I live it every day, and I get to I do my quiet time with God every day by doing Bible reading and journaling and prayer. And so it's huge for me, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, no, and I'm interested in that balance that you're striking for a couple of reasons. One is there's nothing wrong with being evangelistic, right? I mean, that's part of what comes out of the modern Christian church, is what I'm going to say, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
Modern Christian churches really promote the evangelistic aspect, and trying to balance it as a business person who's being pragmatic about their business in a country that, while you have a lot of people of faith, you have a lot of people who prefer to leave that as a very separate part of their lives. How do you balance that with, let's say you've got a new client you're dealing with, especially corporate clients. You have to be careful in that environment. How do you balance that?
Yes, usually when I have them tell their story, just like you had me tell my story, they're in that first session, I could hear their values come out. And then within session 2, when I ask them to do a core values exercise with me, then I get to hear if spirituality and faith is a big deal for them or if it's not. It usually comes out pretty quickly in people's stories. If I find out that they truly are a person of faith similar to me, then we can go there, so to speak. Like we can talk on that similar level. And I've even prayed with my clients, my corporate clients before, if we were on the same page. If they're not a person of spirituality and faith, then I just, like I said, I sort of eke out the values in other ways of just morality and what kind of principles can we apply that I know are going to be good for your success, no matter if you're a person of faith or not.
Awesome. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, because there's something that you said about family. You said family, and then you mentioned Laura, and what struck me was, as I was reading your bio, you referred to her as lovely Laura.
Yes.
Which I think is incredibly sweet. How did you come about to call her lovely Laura? Why is that?
I have a lot of L words. So I'm a nickname kind of a guy. So there's been some movie characters that like to nickname other people, and I always think it's funny. It's just a humorous way to tease people that appreciate the teasing. So I've come up with a whole bunch of L words for Laura. But when I think of lovely being that one, it's like she's my lover. She's my best friend. She is a beautiful person on the inside and out. And so that's the one that I chose for the bio.
That's beautiful. I just thought it was so sweet. I had to ask about it. I thought it was. You mentioned California sometimes not being a great fit for you, in some ways not being a great fit for you because of a lack of family values. What were you seeing there? What were you experiencing there that made you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, there was and it's hard to put a finger on exactly how I felt, like to actually label it with something. But as I observed within the school, this fast-paced society that was running past their relationships, and to see some of the fractures that came out through the children and the students from this. I mean, they had the material wealth, And it was a private school, so they have to pay big time tuition on top of it. And coming up, with very expensive cars, there's just sort of this outward like material that like these people have it together. Like they've got the toys and they've got the looks. But then I could see like there wasn't the relationships. There was like people weren't spending the time that they had with each other, but they were having a lot of fun. But they weren't having like they weren't passing on values to their children. And so to see this year after year started to just register for me. And then I felt like I was getting pulled into the culture as well. Like I needed to have the best toys, and I needed to make more money, and I needed to run fast. And I felt like it was incongruent with who I was at my core.
I think that's really interesting, because one of the things, I too am divorced, and I was rearing 3 kids essentially by myself, and I could have pursued, kind of high powered career type stuff. I could have gone that route, but I opted not to, which meant sometimes we didn't feel very comfortable financially, but I wanted to be home when my kids came home, because I feel like that's the best thing that parents can do, is really give our kids excuses not to make bad decisions.
Yes.
And sometimes just having an adult there makes a huge difference. I don't know about you, but I'm a child of the 80s.
Yes.
We didn't have parents at home. we didn't have parents at home. We got ourselves into all kinds of trouble just because there was nobody there. So that's what I always thought, and I think I see what you mean. I've been out to California too, and it's definitely a different animal certainly from down south, and I would imagine from some other places. What other things did you experience that made you feel like family is the heart and soul of everything?
Well, divorce will bring you back to the basics, right? Because it brings you to the sort of the end of yourself, and it makes you prioritize what's most important. And so I was very fortunate that it was an amicable divorce, where my ex-wife and I co-parented very well all the way through, because they were 6 and 3 at the beginning. We got them all graduated last year.
Yay.
one from college, one from high school, and that felt wonderful. Even though in 2020 they got ripped off of their graduations.
It was a jip, man. It was a jip.
It was a jip. But we did really well co-parenting throughout that process. And so what we did is we did a halftime custody thing where it was 3.5 days on, 3.5 days off, which is an unusual plan. I don't know too many other parents, divorced parents, that do that, but I was never 3.5 days far from getting to see my kids again. And that was really wonderful, because even though I felt like I was losing them for half of their life, I was unable to communicate values to them for half of their life, which, that could still get me a little riled up today if I think about it too much. But I was still able to see them, and I was ready for them when they arrived. And it just brought me back to dad and kids nights, where we would have a daddy daughter night or a daddy son night, and give them full attention during that time. So that's what really grounded family and parenting deeper into my life at that point.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Especially, I think men bring something different to parenting. I think that men encourage, and tell me if you think I'm maybe stretching this out and making this more complicated. I feel that men encourage adventure at a different level. They encourage, that independence in a different way. Does that make sense? Like, yes, maybe you guys tend to play more physical games, take out to do things, get them to try new things that maybe I, as the mom, might say, oh, that looks dangerous. And I'm not saying all moms are this way or all dads are this way. I'm just saying that that's just been my observation. Does that sound like something that makes sense to you?
It does. I read a book called Wild at Heart I don't know how many years ago. It's probably 20 years ago now. And I hadn't seen it in print, what you just said, but it's
Mhm.
true. It's like inside most men is this adventure spirit. Like we
Mhm.
want to be wild and free at some point. And I was such a shy, reserved person that I was like, ooh, adventure, that sounds scary, you know. But as I found myself, my true self throughout the years, it's like it's true. I want to go hiking and I want to go golfing and I want to try new things and go to new places.
Mhm.
So you're right. Like with kids, I think dads can play that role, and not that moms can't, because they absolutely. There's a lot of women I know that are more adventurous than I am, but there is that innate sense of wanting to build a confident child who tries new things and realize they didn't die. You know, they got through it,
Yeah.
and you're going to now have more confidence for the next new thing that you try, because that skill of having self-confidence and being able to bounce and be resilient is something that not every child has. And I think we're seeing it in our culture nowadays. When something little happens, people freak, and they freak pretty big. So I wanted to try to build that into my kids. I don't know if I didn't hit 100%, but that was one of my goals.
Yeah, but you know, if you and I both came of age in the 80s, we were just kind of thrown out like, oh, go play, bye. And we kind
Yep.
of, this is something I tell my kids. I was like, you guys didn't have the opportunity, partly because, you know, I moved out to a suburb where there are no sidewalks. You know, Atlanta is one of those cities, you know, it's almost like they want you to drive to your house, stay there. like Marty McFly's neighborhood in Back to
Uh-huh.
the Future, like nobody's supposed to leave their house.
Yeah.
But or at least that's how it felt to me in that movie. But I grew up in a city, you know, there were sidewalks and you'd walk to your friend's house and hang out, and you guys would all walk home to and from school together. And kids developed a certain resilience
Yes.
just because of that level of independence they were given at fairly young ages. Not like crazy New York young ages. I've heard of like 6-year-olds on the subway by themselves in New York, which is insane.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, I think we had a different level of freedom that kids don't necessarily have anymore. At some point, everybody got scared their kid was going to be kidnapped and, you know, eaten by wolves or whatever it is that they thought.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know that we give our kids enough freedom anymore, you know, to develop on their own. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and if you are mom and dad in the home together, and you've got that privilege of being the nuclear family, whatever that means nowadays, I think that's a gift, because usually you marry your opposite. At
Yeah.
least that's what I've noticed. And so one is usually more cautious, the one that's always saying, be careful, be careful, be careful. And the other one is like, come on, just let them go for it. Let them try. And that's a really nice blend, you know,
Yeah.
too, because it pulls one way, like well, I'll use my marriage as an example. So Laura's very spontaneous, creative, in the moment, emotive, and I'm a little bit more on, I got to have the plan, the structure, you know, this is the way it's going to go down. And so she pulls me towards spontaneity, which is great. That's the spice of life. And I pull her towards a plan. Like we've got to be there on time for this person or this appointment.
Mhm.
And so I think with parenting, it's the same deal. If you can have that nice blend of a little bit of adventure, but also we're not going to go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think kids crave that. I think kids want just enough rope,
Yep.
especially when they're toddlers and when they're teenagers. Those other ages is not quite so extreme in my opinion, but that's my observation.
Yep. And we're raising what they say, we're raising dogs when they're younger, and then we're raising cats when they're teenagers.
Is that what they say? I've never
Yeah,
heard that.
we,
That's awesome.
we have to change our style when they become teenagers.
I don't know. I think we kind of go back to the toddler stage, you know, how we handled them as toddlers, where you give them just enough room and then you kind of yank them back, you know?
Good point.
Wow. Well, the third value you mentioned was growth.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about, what does that mean to you? How does that show up for you in your work with your clients?
Man, this gets me excited, just like the other two, because I am an insatiable learner. So that means that every day I am reading professionally. I'm reading inspirationally through the Bible, and then I read professionally on my core topics of leadership and personal growth. So I read about 40 to 50 books a year. So, and just chip away at them, each day. I have so I've got a hardback book in my book cube by my reading chair. I've got a audiobook going in the car, a book on CD. So that's why I'm going in between clients. I've got in my ears while I'm working out, I either have an Audible book, a local library Audible book, or podcasts going. So I am just always, and I always have a magazine in the car just in case there's somebody's late, so I can be reading. So insatiable on that side. I also have a coach myself, which seems congruent, right? Like every coach should have a coach. I love conferences and seminars, which has been a bummer the last couple of years to not be able to go to those live. So I'm just all about learning, because I want to give my clients the most relevant stuff, the most relevant material that could apply to their life. So, I've got a bucket of assessment tools that I could pull out if they're like, man, I'm just stressed and I don't like my response under stress. Hey, I've got a response under stress survey, or like, I feel like I don't have any goals. Hey, I've got this goal setting tool for you. Or, I was just reading this morning that, bosses that walk around and say a positive hello in the morning can set the morale for the rest of the day. That kind of stuff is just, it's on the tip of my tongue because I'm always learning. So I'm always dishing it back out to my clients. Early in my career, I was just a sponge and I just took it in. And then I had a coach say, Paul, you got to have some output. You got to squeeze out the sponge on everybody. So find all the different ways to be an outlet. So social media, or writing articles, writing books, coaching, speaking. And there was a turning point probably around age 30 when I went from just taking it all in to then taking it in for the purpose of spreading it out.
That's awesome. But I would guess, at least for me, it feels like there's an integration period, right? So you take in this new information and you've taken it in, but have you really integrated it into who you are and how you understand things, or rejected part of it because not everything is for everybody. And then after that integration period, then you can kind of push things out, share it. Do you find something similar with you?
Yes. And there's really two schools of thought there. There is the book reader who goes really deep and doesn't want to move on to another book until it truly is fully integrated. I'm a little bit more of the, I don't know, it's sort of like taking in a whole bunch of things at once, sifting for the good stuff, filing it, or putting it in, for a seminar for later, or quick application right away. And so I think there's two schools of thought. Like I've coached some people where we've done some book studies together and they've been like, Paul, can we not go on to the next one until we fully integrated this one? I'm like, okay, I got to slow the train down, because yes, we sure can do that.
You read like I do with here's my hard book. I have my iPad book. I have my audio book. So you're taking in a lot of information.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And when I read a book, Michelle, I give it like 3 reads. So I'll read a book and I'll highlight in it, with my highlighter. And then when I'm done, months later, I will then journal my highlights. So now it's like I'm reading the best pieces of it again. And then years later, I will go back to the journals and literally rip them out of the journal and file them by category, like work-life balance or trust or relationships. And then that turns into some type of a product to pass on. So I really get 3 reads on every book.
That's amazing. Now that's a process I've not heard of anyone doing. And I know for me, well, I'm morally opposed to marking up books. I'm going to
Oh, you're one of those. Okay.
I am. Yeah, I'm morally and ethically opposed to that, because I was taught that books are our friends and we must keep them pristine. I do dog ear the corners.
Okay.
sometimes,
All right.
But I am more inclined to I will even use a napkin to hold my page before I dog ear the corners.
That's
Just
hilarious.
'cause, yeah, I think that's my Catholic school upbringing. We had to keep the books in really nice
Yes.
condition.
Yes.
So I don't know if you remember putting paper bag books.
Yes. That's
Yes.
right. Yeah. Book
So
covers. Mhm.
that's I typically the most I'll do is dog ear a book cover, a book page, but I am almost obsessive about not writing on books. Uh, but I love that concept, right? That you find the parts that are most valuable, you record that, I'm going to tell everybody don't highlight in the books, but you can use those little flags from Office Depot.
Right. You could do that.
Mark what you consider to be most important, then go back later and really kind of dig into that, journal about it. So I'm presuming you're writing not just what you found valuable, but also your thoughts and feelings on that.
Oftentimes I'll do that. Yeah. Like, because I want to know where I can use this again. So I've got to have some type of label on it that will help me find it in the future so that I can use it, because I know I'm a little OCD with this process, but it's a lot of words and a lot of journals. So
Yeah. But that's a great process. That's an amazing process. That's one I've never really heard of, and certainly worth considering. And by the way, for those of you who use Kindle books or I think Barnes and Noble Nook books and all those, you can highlight in those. Just
that's true.
No, but I think that's a wonderful process to kind of take in the information, spend some time kind of letting your brain do what it does subconsciously to take it in, and then going back to review it and really dig into how you feel about it and what you think about it, what you value. Do you still value it the same way as when you highlighted it? That's an interesting question too.
It is a good question, because I used to be the guy that would come back from a conference and want to implement everything tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm,
and I would come
mm-hmm.
back to the leadership team and say, let's do this and this and this. And they would be like, whoa, Paul, slow down, like back up the truck, like we weren't at that seminar like you were. So we don't have the same type of, and I was just confused for so many years. Like, why are they not as enthusiastic about it as I am? And so I had to learn to sit on stuff and mull over it, meditate on it for a bit before realizing, okay, this is what can be applied, and this is something for the back burner.
Got it. And that's a maturation.
It is.
Aspect, right? That because I still go to conferences and get excited, and but I think that is part of our maturation as just grown-up people, but also in our careers, and particularly if we're coaches or business people, what we can actually implement immediately, or if it's even right for our particular circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you work with your clients? What kinds of things do you work on with your clients, and how do you do that? So
probably my target audience, quote unquote, would be a middle manager who is stressed out, unable to get their priorities done, has family commitments, is trying to take good care of themselves, but is just running out of time all the time to get their work stuff done in their home, and putting in all their values into their calendars. So time management has emerged over the last, I would say, 10 years as a niche for me. I was trying to brand as the calendar coach for a while. And I do have a free gift for your listeners if anybody's interested in that, which we could talk about at the end. But wanting to help people manage their time, because we live in the context of time. We all have the same amount of hours in the day. And we've got to live more intentionally, or else we just drift, or we just deal with the most urgent, or we just react and put out fires all day long. And then another day goes by and like, what did I get done today? I was moving, but did I get anything done? And then we get to the end of another year and like, how am I different this year than I was last year? How are my relationships better? How am I more poised for career advancement at the end of this year than last year? And then we scratch our heads and go, man, I'm not any different, because we just let the world just take over our calendar. And so time management is probably the best way that I coach my clients from the very beginning.
That's amazing. And I'm a big proponent of time management. I think I used to be better at it than I am now, but but I mean, it's really important because it's not just about what you get done at work. I think sometimes people think time management and they think just what you get done at work, right? Or just what you get done in terms of your, you know, outside of family obligations. But those other things really matter as well. And I love that you talk about making sure that you have that time, and that balance is an overused word, but that's the word that I want to use right now, to make sure that it's not just the work stuff. It's not just your volunteerism. It's not just your political activism or whatever. It's also that time with family and loved ones so you can cultivate a life. Life is not made up of work.
Right. Yeah. It's like we aren't what we do, right? It's I even block out time on my calendar. I block out time for everything. Like I said, I'm a little OCD with it. So like I've got date night with Laura always blocked out. It's every Friday night, right? It's sacred. I've got church on Sunday morning blocked out. I've got date nights with my kids when they were in the home blocked out. I've got reading time blocked out. I even have filing on my calendar. I know, Michelle, now I'm starting to meddle a little bit. It's just 30 minutes a week, but
okay.
But
you know, I understand that because that can fall through the cracks, and then you end up with a stack of papers in your inbox.
Yeah. So that's how I try to live intentionally, and it really has maximized my productivity over my life as a result of that intentionality.
That's awesome. Well, I am interested in how you can help our audience. So how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the free tool I would love to give your audience is takebackmycalendar.com. Go to takebackmycalendar.com, and that is a free control my calendar checklist. If you want to just start the journey with some basic tools for time management, that's where I would start you out. So that's just a free tool. If you want to get in touch with me and if I could be of assistance in your journey at all, I'm at paulcasey.org, and that is my website. On all the social channels, as well as either Growing Forward Services or Paul Casey.
Awesome. So that's takebackmycalendar.com.
You got it.
Go there, get the checklist. Make sure you check out Paul Casey's website, paulcasey.org. Paul, thank you so much for being on Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard.
It has been a pleasure, Michelle.
Well, that's our show this month, guys. You can reach me online at michelleberard.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Urban Book Editor. Feel free to send in some topics you'd like us to cover on the show. I'd love to hear from you. You can find us once a month on Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern at the somewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. Let's continue the conversation. You guys be good, stay mindful, and remain prayerful. Peace and blessings, y'all.